Is our NBA insider, Brian Windhorst. Brian, we got a little lull. We're in that 5-day lap sometimes between games in the NBA Finals when they shift cities. The shift is now back to Cleveland for the next 2 games. Is this series over, Brian, or does Cleveland have a chance to make it a series now that they're back on their home court?
Yeah, I mean, my experience just from covering a lot of finals and just covering a lot of playoff series says that no matter what games 1 and 2 look like, even when they're as lopsided as we saw, and even as great as the Warriors have been, I mean, I'm not going to, say one thing that, is going to take that team from the pedestal that they've earned. Things change within series. Basketball games are fragile. I don't see a whole lot of cracks right now for the Cavs to exploit. The Cavs have a lot of issues they got to deal with, and I don't know if they have answers for some of them. But so often people make assumptions about series after 2 games, and then they change. And because I've seen enough of that, I'm relying more on experience to say it's not over. Not necessarily because I see all these things the Cavs could do to change the flow.
Well, we saw that last year. I mean, the Cavs fell down 2 games to none. They were down 3-1, and they went on to win the series. However, #caveat asterisk, Kevin Durant wasn't on the Warriors a year ago.
Durant is playing at the I was thinking about this last night. Durant and Curry, we haven't seen 2 guys play at the peak of their powers like this, I think, since Shaq and Kobe at the turn of the century. Because even when Dwayne Wade and LeBron were together, they weren't at the peak of their powers at the same time. The first year they were together, Wade was awesome, but LeBron was not. And I don't think Wade ever retained that level. So they were close. But the last time I think we saw 2 guys dominating at this level, basically what I would call MVP level, because Shaq was winning MVPs, or at least won an MVP in that stretch where they three-peated, and Kobe was right there amongst the top 5 players in the league. That's the last time I've seen the level at which Steph Curry and Kevin Durant are playing with side by side in those first 2 games. And if Steph Curry was here with us right now, he would tell you that he wasn't even really that great because he had all those turnovers in game 2. And I would say, well, you still had a 30-point triple-double, which has happened only a handful of times in NBA Finals history. So to see those 2 guys play at this level is breathtaking. And you look at it and say, we could be in for quite a few years of this. But also, NBA basketball especially, and you sound like an alarmist and you sound like a conservative, and there's nothing I can really do about it. It's just so fragile. The game itself, the style of play of the NBA is fragile, so you never make an assumption.
Brian, I get the feeling, and I get it from LeBron James. Every time a reporter asks him about this series, and they say, yeah, it's 2-0, it's the same, and they ask him what's different this year, and he says 2 letters, KD. KD's different. And I get the feeling LeBron recognizes that this year is going to be different than last year. What can the Cavaliers do to slow down Durant where they don't also allow Curry and Thompson to get cooking?
Yeah, I don't know if there's an answer because part of it is the Cavs aren't really equipped to play what they need to do. See, for example, the Cavs are a team that is built to play fast. But the faster you play, the more you play into Golden State's hands. And it's almost a bit of a trap. And what happened in Game 2, for example, is the Cavs felt like to get to their style, they had to increase the tempo. And in fact, the first half of Game 2 was the fastest tempo the Cavs have played at all season. But you can't outfox the Warriors that way. And the way that, typically when you talk to scouts or you talk to coaches over the last couple of days like I have, they're all saying the same thing. Slow the game down. Play LeBron in the post. Make it put it in the mud. Slow the Warriors down. The problem is that's not how the Cavs are constructed. The Cavs are not constructed to play great half-court defense. They don't have great defensive players. They don't have great defensive habits. It could be that they're just getting beat, by a better machine here, and that may be the way it goes. But slowing it down is probably the way they're going to have to go. That doesn't mean it's going to work, though.
Well, one thing, Brian, that has to happen if the Cavs are going to have a chance to get back in this series by winning one of these next two games in Cleveland, they've got to have somebody else besides LeBron, Kevin Love, and Kyrie contribute. I mean, LeBron had a triple-double. Kevin Love had 27, I think, and Kyrie had 19 in Game 2, and everyone else got a participation ribbon for the Cleveland Cavaliers. They're going to have to find a Kyle Korver, a Darren Williams, a J.R. Smith. Somebody else is going to have to provide them offense besides those three guys.
For sure. And that was one of the things that they did really well during the playoffs coming into this. I mean, their second unit in the first couple of rounds was devastating. You know, go ask the Toronto Raptors about Kyle Korver. He took them to their knees. Darren Williams, and I realize that, people are making fun of Darren Williams and saying, well, he's done as a player, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, I know. I know he's not the $100 million player that he was 5 years ago, but he actually was a pretty valuable backup point guard for this team for the first 3 rounds, and they just haven't gotten it from him. Now, historically, you look at the playoffs, role players tend to play better at home than they do on the road. That's just something that we see over the course of year after year. So one of the reasons you want home court advantage is your role players feel more comfortable at home. Does that mean Kyle Korver hits 5 threes tomorrow night? Does that mean Darren Williams becomes more of a factor? I don't know. I do know that it's probably a better chance of them doing that. But, of course, you're right, Trey. To have a chance against the Warriors, you got to have a maximum effort all the way up and down your team. You really need 7 guys, I think, contributing at a pretty high level. And we're talking about beating these guys one time, not 4 out of 6 or 4 out of 5 at this point.
Brian, what has been going on with Tristan Thompson? He's a guy who loves to bring the energy, the effort, the grittiness. He's kind of the emotional leader. He hasn't been there. Is there anything in particular that's going on with Tristan Thompson?
There's a couple of things happening. Number one, with the Cavs agreeing to play at this super high tempo speed, the Warriors are deploying basically small lineups that are forcing the Cavs to only play one big man. When they go with Kevin Durant or Draymond Green at center, they just can't cover enough ground, and they're forcing the 2 bigs off the court. And it's just so funny because, we think of playing small these days as playing with like 2 power forwards instead of 1 center, which is kind of how the Cavs play. I mean, really, Tristan Thompson came into the NBA as a power forward. That's what Kevin Love is. They start essentially 2 power forwards, and the Warriors force you down to 1 power forward and 4 wings. And that's part of what's going on. The second part of it is he's just not getting able to rebound like he normally does. Now, what he would say and what Tyronn Lue said is that they are treating him almost like a great scorer. When the shot goes up, they're bracketing him on offensive rebounds, putting 2 guys on him, and that's why Kevin Love's rebounds are up. But he is not getting his hands on contested rebounds. This is a guy who was always known for put 2 guys on him, put 3 guys on him. I remember in the last round against the Celtics, there was one play. He had 4 Celtics guys in the paint with him, and guess who came out with the ball? He's just not doing it. He's not getting it done. He was battling knee tendonitis at the end of the season. He said he's not hurt. I watched him after the game in the locker room the other night. He didn't get any extra treatment, so I don't know. I don't think it's that. But he's not been executing at what he's paid to do, which is to get those rebounds out of the crowd.
Well, they're going to have to get all of that and maybe a little more to try and get this thing back on some sort of track for them to find success Wednesday night when the series shifts to Cleveland. All right, Brian, before we let you go, let's leave reality for a second and go into the fantasy topic that a lot of people have been talking about. The Las Vegas Superbook Westgate says the Warriors would be a favorite if they were going to play Michael Jordan's Bulls, 95-96 Bulls. Your thoughts on that potential matchup? What would you see happening with the current Warriors against that great Bulls team in the 90s?
Well, I think both teams would be completely blown away by the style of play. The Warriors would have never seen anything like the way the Bulls would bruise you, and the way Dennis Rodman plays, and the way that Jordan and Pippen would D up. But the Bulls would have never seen anything like the 3-point shooting volume. And the concept in the 1990s of playing basically 4 wing players would have been so foreign that it's almost incomprehensible. It's almost like they're not playing the same sport. We can have an academic discussion on this. The style of play would be such a shock that I think both teams would stun the other. And the only thing I could probably say is it would probably be a really long series because both teams would, enact such a force of play on the other. But I think it's an incredible compliment. This is a conversation I've often had about LeBron, because when LeBron dominates his current competition so dramatically that you start putting in a historical context and bring in Jordan, it's an incredible compliment to LeBron. It's saying he's so far above everybody today that you start putting him in, like great generals in the history, Alexander the Great versus General MacArthur, blah, blah, blah. And now I would say the same thing about this Warriors team. They are playing this at such an incredible level, 14-0, going after a historical situation that we are now having this conversation because we can no longer compare them to their current peers. To me, that is the answer. And I think I wasn't doing this job back in the mid-1990s. My guess is those same conversations were happening back then with the Bulls, and to me, that's the bottom line.
Absolutely. And I think the biggest X factor here would be what rules are they playing under?
Yes.
Are they playing under the hand check rules of the 90s or the, hey, run around and do whatever you want of the current NBA?
I got news for you guys. You could, that's what the old guys say. The old guys say, oh, yeah, I could, because I've talked with Scottie Pippen about this. You can't touch him. Yeah, I agree with that a little bit. You got to catch Steph Curry and Kevin Durant before you can put your hands on them. And it's not as easy as it sounds. They make it seem like that. But the way that the Warriors play today, where they stretch the court to such a level with the space there, it would be harder than those guys think it was, because I think the game is evolving, and typically the more evolved team, the more evolved species has a chance. So I would say that's a factor that people don't quite understand. You got to run down Steph Curry. Good luck.
Yeah, well, you're absolutely right. And the one thing, too, going back to the LeBron scenario, is people forget just how big he is. I mean, Jordan was 6'5", maybe 6'6". LeBron, you put a picture of LeBron next to Jordan, it's amazing how much bigger LeBron is physically than Michael. Not taking anything away from Jordan. Don't at me, as people say with that. So we're just saying we're noticing the comparison, and the size difference is alarming. Brian, we appreciate it. We'll see if we have a series starting Wednesday night in Cleveland. Thanks for being with us.